Hello and welcome to the Pause First Academy channel. I'm Kim Colegrove. I'm an author and the owner of Pause First Academy, where I offer resilience and wellness training and support for society's warriors, protectors, guardians, and healers. Today, I am interviewing a friend of mine and a very important person you're soon going to know. Her name is Cindy.Isaacsen, and she is a court reporter, and she's the President-elect of the National Court Reporters Association. I'm really happy to have you here today, Cindy. Will you take a minute and just tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into our conversation?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am Cindy.Isaacsen. Yes, I am the President-elect of the National Court Reporters Association, and I have been a court reporter for, and it's kind of terrifying to say, I'm in my 37th year.
Well, we're about the same age, sister, so.
I know. It's like, how can I be 37 years when I'm only 37 years old? But I guess that's true. So
Weird, huh?
I know, weird. I'm originally from Texas, but now I live in Kansas, and it's a long, windy story to get from Texas to Kansas, but here I am. So I currently work at the courthouse. I am an official reporter there, but I've done freelance reporting and official reporting in all the different states I've lived in. So here I am, and I'm just so happy to be here with you today.
Welcome. I'm really happy to have you because so I'm going to bring the audience up to speed kind of about our long and winding road that brought us here. So you reached out to me a good probably 3 years ago or something like that because you wanted to provide some wellness and resilience type of training for court reporters in Kansas. And so you organized that. You reached out to Pause First Academy. You brought in me and my friend Darren Ivy. And I think we did a full day, didn't we? Yeah, we did a full day with court reporters and did some breakout sessions and that. And, I've known for a long time that court reporters need mental and emotional support and stress reduction because when I first started, when I quit my corporate job in 2011 to teach stress reduction, meditation, and mindfulness full time, and about 2012 or 2013, one of my early larger like corporate clients was the National Court Reporters Association. Wow. You and I talked about that before I hit record today. And so I said, I kind of feel like I've come full circle. So you reached out and we came and did some training. And I had so many great conversations when we were doing that training of just court reporters coming up and saying, thank you so much. My gosh, I never really realized, how much this job is probably affecting me and, and impacting my emotional health and sleep and like all that. And so then you and I mean, we hit it off immediately when we met, and then you hired my company and stuff. We just hit it off. And so we've stayed in touch and had breakfast and whatever. And then I was, zero surprised because also we kind of kept in touch along your path of becoming the president-elect of the NCRA. So and I wasn't at all surprised that you're stepping into that role because, let me just tell the listeners, she's really kind of a rock star. You meet those rock star people. So anyway, I'm happy to talk to you. I'm excited to start introducing some of this information to court reporters because I feel like you guys have been left out of this conversation, like many other groups, like victim services advocates and many others that need to understand trauma, realize that there's support available for their mental and emotional health, that they don't have to suffer in silence. So thank you for being here. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I want to start, so I want to ask you, at what point in your career did you realize this job is taxing on the mental and emotional health? You realize court reporters are really struggling with chronic stress and things like that. And at what point did you say, we got to change things here? Was there you remember a point that you hit?
I do. It was kind of a catalyst. And in my 37 years, I've always been in different courts, and when I was freelance, you would go and take a deposition. It was mostly civil matters, contracts and car accidents and workers' comp. So you didn't have a lot of the kind of heavy things. And I remember the ones that were hard. I remember them like it was yesterday. So those impacted me, but they weren't consistently hitting me in my mind, my heart, like it was here in court. It was after COVID, and we had such a backlog of court cases, and so a lot of cases, they either pled out or whatever after we got back into the courthouse and we started taking cases. We had to catch up. We had people sitting in jail, and we had to catch up with jury trials. And most of those cases were our level one cases, which were the high level cases. Most of those were murders and sex cases, and we were in trials, either every week or every other week. And it was nonstop. So you're hearing all of this stuff, and not only were you hearing it, you were hearing it often. And then after you hear it, then you have to go back and prepare transcripts of it and proofread it. So it wasn't just once. You have a prelim, and then you have a trial, and then you have to prepare the transcript, and then you're proofreading it. So it wasn't just a one and done. And then you hear it, and there's never a time to offload. And it just became a point where, I've always, not I'm a very talkative person. I'm very good about being able to, I could talk with you and say, hey, I had this case today, and I could offload. But there was so much going on that I couldn't offload. There was no time to offload. And then I had a realization that I'm offloading some things, some very difficult things on people that I don't know what their background is. I may hear a sex case, and then I'm offloading onto people I might go to church with or my neighbors. I don't know their history. They may have a history of sexual abuse. And if I'm offloading onto them, that may cause them distress, or it may bring up some things in the past. And now I'm bringing up some problems for them. And then I'm like, well, where do we go? We as court reporters, and we're kind of isolated. We go into court. We're kind of the silent, people making the record. We go back to our offices. We make transcripts. We go home, and we have no one to talk to. We do it all over again the next day. So I just kind of had this realization that, and I started crying a lot. It was one of those things where, and after you guys came, because I was kind of feeling like this little secondary trauma, and you guys came, and then I went for NCRA, as we have a lot of rep assignments. We go to a lot of different conferences, and I heard one. I was up in Canada, and the lady was talking about, she was a news reporter, and she said, all of a sudden, I'm just crying about everything. And it was just one of those moments that I had of, my goodness, that's what I was doing. I just started crying over silly things. I was crying all the time over, and I kept thinking, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying all the time? What's your deal? And so that is kind of one of those moments where I realized maybe all this stuff there is kind of taking its toll. And so that's a long answer to say that's when I started realizing this is getting to you. 37 years you've tamped down, and you pushed it down, you pushed it aside and pushed it aside, but we can only take so much, and we need a place to go. And I can't be the only one.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So your conscious awareness of this is far and above most people, only because they don't have any point of reference. There's no context. No one has ever opened these books for them. Like, hey,
Yeah.
So and I'm glad that you gave all that detail, because for people who are listening, I know there will be a lot of people that go, oh my gosh, me too, or she gets it, or I've been feeling like this, but I didn't know what was going on. And I hear this across all these professions that I've worked with full-time since 2017. Police, firefighters, emergency medical folks, nurses, social workers, because you all have very different jobs with different details, but you all serve a very similar clientele, and you're all exposed to trauma and the trauma of others. And trauma didn't get the memo that you have different jobs or there's different details, right? So it impacts all of you mentally and emotionally, and then that can start to impact your physical health. And all of that combined can start to impact your social life, your home life, your relationships. But there's no one explaining this to you.
Mhm.
There's nobody there to educate and inform and support court reporters when they go through this. And so just like all these other professions, they look around and everyone else seems okay because no one comes to work and cries and complains about it. And so then you start to think something's wrong with you, right? Like, am I weak? Am I broken? Am I whatever? So I want to turn up the volume on this conversation and crack this wide open. And I love that you've decided to bring help to the court reporters. And now you have the opportunity to do that on a nationwide basis. So kudos to you. And let's stand and applaud because we can start to make a difference for court reporters. So what would, just in your 37 years of experience and talking to other people, what do you think are some of the most common chronic stress and kind of trauma related symptoms that court reporters struggle with?
Oh, I think that, just like in, the first thing that, for me, um, we go home and you say, we either shut it down and we keep it, we keep it in, and you feel this, the stress that comes up from your shoulders up to your. So you first, you have that physical, the physical aspects. We hurt, our back hurts, our head hurts. So you're taking medications. I think we have the depression part of it that we take on so much of this stuff, and we feel, we have empathy um, for the people that we deal with. A lot of times, especially like in child in need of care courts, you have these young children that are being taken out of the homes because their living conditions are so awful, that you just can't get that out of your mind. You just feel so awful for these children, and so there's this the empathy, um, just there's just so many things that you wish that you could take these. You want to take these children home, and so that weighs on your mind. That what more can I do? I think a lot of times that the medication, we try to medicate ourselves, either through alcohol, through
Mm-hmm.
drugs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, legal or illegal. I think that we lash out at one another, either at home, with our own children. We either try to overprotect them because of what we've seen. We try to helicopter them because we don't want them to, we don't want them to have something happen to them that we see happen to others. My daughter will tell you, I told her she cannot go to the mall. I know what happens at the mall. You cannot go to the mall. do not go
Yeah.
to the mall. And
Hypervigilance,
yes,
hypervigilance,
right.
exactly like military and law
Yeah,
enforcement. They become very hypervigilant because of the work they do and what they see, and very overprotective of their kids from your heart, out of love,
right.
right? But then that starts to stress your family out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing, when you see car accidents and we hear about car accidents and, them going off, you know, taking a long trip, the anxiety that you feel knowing what could happen, that, you take that on and you can just feel yourself, you want them to go and have a good time and have a nice, a great life. And, but that causes a lot of personal anxiety on yourself. And sometimes that may get pushed off onto them. Um, but I think that even with each other, with on a professional level, I think sometimes our anger, with the things that we deal with, we lash out at each other,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what to do with all of this stuff. It's we don't know what to do with all of the things that we hear,
Yeah.
and it's not intentional. We just do,
Yeah, I think it's mostly unconscious.
Sure.
We feel. I've talked about this with a lot of police officers and firefighters. Is you get so filled with the emotions that you don't know what to do with, and you're not facing or talking about, right? You just have, and so they use black humor a lot. They'll joke around about things that aren't, like, the average person wouldn't think it was fun. But
Yeah.
but what it is that this emotion has to have some kind of release,
Hmm.
and can't cry, you know. especially in some of these
Right.
professions where like you got to be, and so you find your ways to release some of that. I've said for many years, from my observation, I see when people do these difficult jobs and they're stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, all the things. The the way they try to survive it is stay either distracted or sedated. So
Right.
distract yourself. So, you know, busyness can be a trauma symptom because you're traumatized. You don't know what to do about that or how to handle it. And so you just keep yourself busy, busy, like you fill every minute of every day, make the next plan, next plan, next plan. And, you're always going and doing something like kind of trying to outrun it. That's
Mhm.
really common. Um, or however else, a lot of people work a part-time job or, just keep themselves so busy because if they sit in silence or they're quiet or they sit still with themselves, they become aware of it and they don't know what to do. And then otherwise, like you said, sedated, the minute you get off work, you just start pouring drinks because
Mhm.
you have to have some relief. So what I'm trying to do, and there's a whole bunch of us out here, and I really want to start reaching out to some of these groups that are not getting the information and not getting help. We're just trying to educate people. And, I'm excited that you're going to bring this to court reporters.
Yeah.
First of all, educate them. And once you tell them, here's what you're feeling and here's why, they have so many aha moments like, oh, and it's normal. Oh, and everyone else in this room is going through this
Yeah.
too, right? So that's a gift to them. But not only that, then we give them resources and practices and ideas and tips and tools and tricks and ways that they can begin to heal some of that. Because I do believe people can go through these professions healthfully,
Right.
but 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 not without some information, education, and support around the mental and emotional piece. So people who are listening to this today can go back and listen to my episode for court reporters. You'll see on the thumbnail it says this one's for court reporters, to learn a little bit more about what we're talking about right now, because we're not going to take a deep dive into the trauma and the symptoms and that, but I talk about that on that episode, and I'll throw an image up for anyone who's watching so they can go back and watch that one. So to this point about bringing this stuff to court reporters, this is what I really wanted to talk to you about
Yeah.
today. So can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts and ideas about how you're going to bring some resilience and wellness training? And I know that you are looking into peer support, and I'm really excited to talk to you about that. So
Yeah.
lay it on us.
This is something that's just been on my heart so much for a long time, and I thought, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And I was at a conference in September, and they were talking about a peer-to-peer support group, and I'm like, it was like this ginormous light bulb went off. So I've been working and doing deep dive and trying to figure out what can we do for our court reporting community, how can we make this happen? And not just in because every courthouse, every community, every state, everybody's different, and what you do in your own courthouse or your own association, that may be different, and it's wonderful if you can do that. But I wanted to get us as a whole because we are so isolated, and it's not intentional.
Mhm.
But when I worked at a freelance firm, I only saw our people at a Christmas party. It's like, you work here? I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because we're so busy, and that's just the nature of the job. But I thought I would fail my colleagues if I walked away after a year of presidency and I didn't take care of this one thing that we all struggle with. And this is hearing stuff every day, and and we don't know how to offload it. We don't feel like we have a place to go. And so I've been working on this, and we just this last week got funding approval through our National Court Reporters Foundation for 3 sessions for 2025, and we'll be looking for funding for 2026. So if there's anybody out there who wants to contribute, we'll be happy to take your funding.
Hey,
But
I'll pause you right there. I'm gonna drop all of your information in the description box below the video. So
wonderful,
anyone who wants to reach out to you or know more
wonderful.
or ask like how could I contribute
Perfect.
to that people will reach out to you, or you'll give me the right numbers or
Awesome.
people, email
Perfect.
addresses. Okay.
So we are starting, and the first one will be in June. We will have it will be a Zoom platform, and it will be an hour to an hour and a half long. So it will be a Zoom link, and you have to register ahead of time, but you can sign in. We'll have breakout rooms. We'll have questions that will go into the breakout rooms. We'll come back together. So we'll be very interactive. We have the person who will be leading it is known to the foundation. She did a presentation back in February, Bev Perez, Bevy Bev, and she's
Debbie Bev.
wonderful, and you're going to love her. Um, she's was a police officer, but she's a master's social worker, and she will be wonderful and will give us guidance. And I'm excited that we'll be very conversational when we go into our breakout rooms. But it will be great that we will have, you're going to meet other people who are wanting to be able to come together and have conversations. And you can meet other people like us, who may be struggling, or who may just want to talk, or maybe court reporters that you've never met before that you can make contact with, and also you can meet her, and you can sign up, and she has a Zoom. I mean, she has a calendar that you can sign up, and um, you can make private appointments with her to have, if you want an hour just to talk with her one on one, you can do that as well. I am so excited about this project. Um, just and at the end of it all, we'll have some kind of survey questions so that we can move and groove with this and say, what do we need to focus on? Where do we need to go with this? Because I don't want it to be, this is just how it's going to be, because that's not how we are as people. We need to know what you need, and how you see this going, because we really want to give our colleagues what they need, what your heart needs, what your mind needs, to help you manage the stuff that we hear, and to learn how to dump, to learn how to offload. What's the best way to do that? And when we have those questions, she's going to give us some resources, and I'm just super excited about this new adventure that we're going to have, and just to have something for us to a place to go.
Yes, I love this so much. Oh, and I love that you're doing it on Zoom. Obviously, it needs to be online because you have court reporters in big cities and you have court reporters in the very small remote towns and everything in between, and you can't fit everything into an annual conference,
No,
and there needs to be an ongoing regular support, and so that's where everyone can exchange. I feel like all kinds of stuff will organically grow from this,
right,
but exchange contact information.
right.
um, and I
Because you
love
may
that
not
you're
always need like an hour. You may just need to have a friend who goes, you know, man, I'm struggling today, and you've made a contact. You've made a friend, and
yes, yes,
that's
you'll
just
have
a
people that'll
wonderful thing,
say, hey, here's my number.
right?
If you work a particularly difficult case and you just need to talk, you can
Yeah,
always text me or call me and just we'll talk it through. That's what peer support does for
right.
people. The most important thing I think when you have a high stress, high pressure job is having a community and support. Because you've mentioned a couple of times in this conversation that you guys feel alone, you're isolated, you say things like that, and that is truer than true.
Mhm.
It's not like, firefighters go through it. Then they come back to the firehouse and they eat meals together and they sit around their kitchen table. And so it's like some camaraderie, and they can debrief and
Right.
they can, talk through stuff. I mean, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But yeah, for court reporters, there's really none of that. And also, I don't know how much a court reporter that's been in 20 or 30 years, from what I gleaned when I worked with your group, when we offered the training, was that this was the first any of them were hearing. Most of them. This is the first most of them were hearing about this. And
Right.
there was tons of light bulbs going off.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. And I love that you found just the right person. She has that great background to really perfectly understand what it is you guys see and hear and take in and endure. And for court reporters, you don't just see it once. You listen to it, you record it, you go back, you transcribe it, like, right?
Yeah.
So
It's just
so it's like
over and over. You just
you're re-traumatized. And then that empathy, that sympathy, that concern, that care. I in the video that I talked about earlier, I talk about compassion fatigue, and I know that's got to be really prevalent in your
yeah,
profession. When you see me looking down, it's because I'm taking notes. I'll think of a
yeah.
question, and I have to jot it down so I don't forget the question. So I don't want you to think I'm just like
Oh, no,
wandering
playing
away.
solitaire.
I have a playing
Playing
solitaire. Yeah. So the next question I have for you is: Do you plan to? I don't know. Are you a part of your annual? Do you have one big conference each year?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so will you bring more kind of wellness, mental health, resilience kind of, or is the conference just filled with continuing education that they have to have? Is there any room for
Mostly.
any of this?
And I haven't thought about that, but I think that is a great idea. I've been to several state conventions, and the state conventions are usually filled with a lot of um, secondary trauma, wellness type things. So
Good.
I think the states do a really nice job of bringing in speakers,
Good.
for you guys.
Good. Because
I've always
you
been very
obviously
impressed.
think that you feel that's a very important part of
Right,
their continuing education now,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
figured.
sometimes they're too. It's like I went to one and it was like the 2 full days, and I was like, oh man, I'm exhausted because it does because when you start when you're not used to going into that part of your mind and your heart, and you do.
Mhm.
It's like going to a retreat, like a whole weekend retreat, and you come back and you're more tired than what you were when you got there because like you said, we try to fill our minds with noise.
Yeah.
When you shut the noise off and it's just you and your heart, that's a lot. And I think that that's why we have so much with our phones and gaming and, all of this stuff. I think we're scared to be alone with ourselves.
I mean, it's one of the human sicknesses, I think.
Hmm.
It's a very prevalent human condition of people, just the inability to sit with oneself. It's why people
Right,
struggle to meditate so much.
right,
And especially, I'm working with a very traumatized group of people that really have a hard time just sitting still and breathing and being with themselves. And so, over the years I've come up with all kinds of strategies just to help them baby step into it,
right,
because a lot of times if you're at that level of stress and you're kind of traumatized, but you were unaware of it, now you're aware of it. It's really common that um, you you don't really have a neutral. You don't have a you
right,
just go 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 go,
right,
and so just sitting still feels alien to you.
right.
Sitting still and doing nothing. But you know what happens across all these professions, I noticed this. I really thought about this when I worked with the nurses, is that you guys are smart people or you wouldn't be able to have these jobs,
Right,
right? You're smart people. And so when I explain the science behind these stress reduction strategies, these evidence-based practices that you can learn and use to regulate your own nervous system, which helps reduce your own stress. So when I understand the mechanics or like the brain science behind it, it's like you can almost see an actual light bulb going
right,
off, and people go,
right,
"Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense."
right,
I thought about that with the nurses because I'm like, I'm explaining the brain science. They understand biology,
right.
and science and that, and so they're all like, "Oh my gosh, this all
Ah,
makes so much sense."
right.
Yeah. All right. So I love that the tides are turning. I love that there are leaders like you who are kind of leading the charge here. And I know you'll make a difference for the people. Well, now it's nationwide. That's wild that you're going to impact court reporters nationwide.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Well, I'm excited for them, and I was at a leadership legislative boot camp, and I was kind of sharing a little bit. I didn't want to share too much because you don't want to, you don't want to jinx yourself. But I wasn't, even if the foundation, said no, I was not going to stop there. I was going to make this happen one way or another. And there was a girl at the end of the table, and she just, just tears, and she said, "Please, please make this happen." She said, "We need this," and that gave me the extra oomph to make this happen. I thought I can't have people out there who, I knew how I felt. I knew the struggle I was having, and just recognizing and realizing this is where this is coming from. And when it's just constantly in your face and in your heart and in your mind, we have to help. We have to do something. And it's not every day. I could go I could go for a month or two, and I would be in civil court doing contract stuff, and you know, it's kind of mindless chatter. Um, or I could be in, you know, one week after another doing these big cases that are hard to watch, hard to listen to, that it just stays with you.
Yeah.
You just cannot ever get out of your head.
Yeah. You mentioned that earlier, and I think that's a good thing for you to say out loud so other people can go, oh my gosh, me too. Because I've met countless police officers, firefighters, EMTs, emergency nurses, people over the years that say, I think that a couple people in my books have said, I encountered this critical incident on my first year on the job. I remember every detail of it. I've heard so many of these emergency people say, I remember the house. I remember what the house smelled like. I remember everybody that was in the room. I remember what the entire scene looked like. And this, you're talking about 20, 25 years later.
Right.
And that's common. So anyone who's listening who, feels frustrated because you just want to get this stuff out of your head and it has stayed with you, that's really, really common. But I want to also say it's not just common and good luck. I want to
Yeah.
say it's really common. And this is why Cindy's bringing peer support to court reporters. And this is why we encourage you learning simple personal practices to kind of reduce your stress, and also why we encourage you to talk to a therapist or a counselor if at all possible, if you're struggling with images,
Right.
memories, nightmares, things like that. I really want to like pound this into everyone's brain. There is help and support available. Just take a deep breath and reach out to someone. And if you're listening right now and you're like, I don't even know where to start, my advice always to someone just starting out is find one trusted person you can talk to. That might be a close friend or a family member. It might be a colleague that you trust. If you can, make a therapy appointment. Maybe just go, because talking is huge. Holding everything in is harmful.
Right.
The ability to talk about it, and like you said, you use the word offload, to be able to offload some of it, can be huge. So anyone who's listening, if you are struggling, you've been struggling for a while, or you're even kind of suffering with some of this stuff, you don't have to continue doing that. That's the whole reason you and I got together to meet. We wanted to let court reporters know like what you have coming up, but also I want to reach out if we can and just say, you guys, if you've worked court cases, now if your entire career has been the non-violent, then you probably don't carry as much. But if you've seen a lot of this and heard a lot of this and you've been in it for a while, it's very common to have mental and emotional fallout.
Right.
But you don't want to just live with it. And if your idea is, I'll push through until I retire and then I'll be happy, that doesn't always happen.
Still
You're going to
there.
deal with it now, or you're going to deal with it later. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And
Do you
that's
have
what
any like closing thoughts or closing idea or closing statements or anything you want to say before we start to do the wrap up?
No, I just want to, because I just never thought that after 37 years that that's when it would hit me. I just thought, I was, skipping through life and no problem, and oh, I can do this. I see it every day. No big deal
How
until it
far
was a
into
big
your
deal.
career were you when you was it when within the past
I was in the past 2 years.
in the
I was
past
like,
two
I
years
was
that
probably
you
at 30, 34, 35 years when it just, and it was just because it was nonstop, and it was just so much. It was so much nonstop, they were such horrific cases, and then it became were the cases it didn't matter whether they were horrific or not. They could have been average cases, and everything bothered me. And
yeah.
so, I couldn't, I couldn't differentiate. Everything was just bad. And then, we, then when I had the realization that I just couldn't talk to anybody because I didn't know their background, I thought, well, that's unfair to my friends and my neighbors. I don't know what their background is.
Yeah.
I can't offload on them because that may create struggles for them, and I certainly don't want to put them into a mental harm's way. So then I felt like I had no one to talk to, and I thought, well, this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
what? You
Yeah,
know?
and you more seasoned people, the veterans that have been around for a while, you can make a huge difference for the younger court reporters and save them a lot of the years
Right.
of struggle that you've.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really kind of a beautiful thing
Yeah.
because the young girl that spoke up that was crying, she was younger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so hadn't been on quite as many years, and so
Yeah.
like these decisions and this training that you're going to bring in peer support, nationwide peer support, I mean, it can really, really change the trajectory of the profession for these younger people. And
Right.
that's a beautiful thing. It's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. Yeah. I've loved this conversation. You're doing really great things. It's going to be fun to watch you. So you step into this role this summer. Is that right?
July 25th, I'll be installed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that will be our annual conference at the Hyatt Regency.
Okay, that's so cool and exciting. All right, and then I'm going to grab all of your contact information. Any information that you want to share with anyone who's listening will be in the description box below, so you can just pop down below there, and you can always reach out to me if there's something you want to know, or a lot of people struggle with how to open the description box and how to expand the description box.
Right.
So I always try and remember to just say it's under the video. You see the title, and then below that you see ... more. Just click on that. That opens up that description box. And so for court reporters across the country that might be listening to this, and they're like, I don't want to miss this. I want to be in on this. Do you have an intranet or like a newsletter that they want to be sure and follow, or how will they know when all this is coming up?
Well, it's through NCRA, and it will be through all of our. We'll put it out in all the communications that'll be coming out here soon in the next, hopefully in the next month, next 3 weeks. So, and they need to be members of NCRA. It's a kind of a member benefit at this point in time. I'm hoping that it will eventually morph into something more, but at this point in time, it will be for our members, and then we'll see where it goes.
I love it. I think, Cindy, that this might eventually, it has the potential to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
And then for individual, more localized
Yeah.
organizations, or people who work in courthouses, I mean, I think that it could grow into something where you get those kind of informal internal leaders, those wellness warriors that might
Mhm.
start to form their own little kind of peer support groups, and everybody kind of start supporting each other. You got people like you are opening the doors here.
I encourage every courthouse. I encourage every group of court reporters, no matter where you're at, whether you're in a freelance firm or a courthouse, get together. Every couple of weeks, check on your people. Have lunch together. Spend 30 minutes saying, how are you doing?
Yes,
The
just
manager saying,
talking. Yes.
how, I know you had a hard case. Let's get together. Let's go. Let's have coffee. It's so important to just get together because I don't need you to solve the world's problems. I just need you to listen to me. if,
Yes.
and
Yes.
say, hey, this is bigger than what I can tackle, but let's find you a resource. And that is all that you need to do, and be sincere about it. And, but I just think we just need to take the time and the opportunities to listen to one another and to be there for one another, and let each other know that we're here for each other. We are a team. We're a very small team, but we've got to be there for one another, and just um, be be soldiers in this fight that we call court and we call testimony, and it's just so important. So whether you do it on a big scale like a national level, or you do it in your small courthouse, do it.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to stand up and cheer. And, really everyone in the courtroom needs it. You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
The judges, the attorneys, the victim service advocates,
Yeah.
like any, the CASA people, like everyone that ever sits in a courtroom needs this mental and emotional support.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a movement that will continue to grow and grow and grow, I think.
I think even jurors, I think that jurors who serve on jury duty, I think that they should have some sort of offloading,
like a debrief,
kind of thing, a debrief, that they have time to just say, wow, this was harder than I thought. It's, especially on these criminal cases, I think that it's good for them to be able to, because they say, thanks for your time. Here's $12 a day and have a nice life. And I think it's difficult for them too. I think that we're just not taking care, and I don't think that we see the impact that this stuff has on people. So,
yes. And so to kind of summarize, the truth is here, we need to turn up the volume on the conversation about mental health in this country, because it doesn't mean mental health doesn't have to mean you're mentally ill.
No.
It's a juror who sits and listens to the most horrific thing they've ever heard, and then is just released to go home, and now has to deal with the mental and emotional fallout. And now maybe they can't stop thinking about it. Maybe they have images, because you guys also have to look at pictures and and all the things. So just turning up the volume and making it okay to say, that affected me, that impacted me. I'm not doing very well. That freaked me out. I'm crying at night. Whatever it is, just turning up the volume on this conversation.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fighting the good fight, sister.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time. I know you're super crazy busy. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me and have a chat with me. And hey, if you ever want to come back and talk again, at the very least, could we at least meet at the end of your tenure and kind of talk about how things, that would be kind of fun to do that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. And then I'll see you on the side personally too.
Yeah, you better.
All right, buddy. Thanks for meeting with me. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. All righty.
Bye-bye.